Hi, hello, and welcome to the library. Is the audio working? I hope so. And I hope that you are doing very, very good. Today I'm cooked, as always. It has been already like a very long week. I feel like, you know, this week has lasted for 10 days. I need my vacation. So, hi, Secret, hi, Ellie. Ugh, I'm trying to open my bottle of iced tea, but I just can't. Ah, okay, very good. So today is she is watching and she is hearing. So today is a small Zatsudan stream because I was too lazy to prepare anything really for today. And I wanted to stream a little bit. I won't be here this weekend. I won't be available, so I figured, and by this weekend I mean, starting kind of like tomorrow. Um, so I figured that it would be nice to squeeze a little stream right here, especially as like on Monday I was not available as well. So it is what it is. If anything, a new patch. Yes, this is patch week. I've just patched the game. I haven't started playing yet. I'll probably do that like at some point. But I want to wait a little bit before doing like MSQ and stuff. I don't know, maybe I'll be able to squeeze like the MSQ this weekend, maybe not. I'll see. I'm pretty excited. We can talk a little bit after that about the the entire fan fest, because I think it was actually pretty interesting in many different ways. But yeah, I am first time watching on my phone. Well, welcome to the stream. Welcome on your phone. Ellie, I hope that you are doing very, very good. Peak meaning good. I mean, like if we talk about like let's talk about the fan fest. We can get that out of the way. Let me also like, okay, I'll try to grab like a link so we can actually like have some pictures or whatever while we talk about this. Where do I want to check like Nova Crystallis? Yeah, we'll do like that. I think it will be the easier way. Okay. You can, I believe, see this. And we can start talking about like this keynote. Why am I not following them? Also, who knows? So yeah, there was like the NA FanFest that was dubbed as kind of like the part 1 or part 0, let's say, of this last patch of Dawn Trail, leading to like 8.0. So that was like the trailer. I think the trailer was very interesting because I was pretty sure that we would like be exploring the 13th, but it seems that it's not the case since we're exploring the 4th. That was well known already for quite a long time for being the reflection that was corrupted by the flood of ice. And it was related to the whole like Corvosi and kind of like Southern Isles law, right? Like especially with the Lalafell fleeing from there. There was like obviously like a tie-in in the base expansion of like on Trail when it was Kryle's parents in kind of like also the origin of the key. Obviously the key is being like the important thing right now. I don't want to analyze too much the trailer because it's kind of like, free if you haven't played the game, if you're not like up to date. But let's just say I think like this was kind of like the interesting but also like kind of like obvious thing that we noticed in the last patch with our new Asian Winters friends talking about how the star is being led to decay at some point, or at least something bad will happen. And this is probably, as was hinted by several quests, this is probably the fact that with the absence of Zodiac and Heidelin, the star Aetheris cannot hold itself properly. There was like disturbances in the ley lines, as was mentioned in the. Well, it was both in the. I can't remember what quest. What like crafter quest of like Endwalker, but it was mentioned in the Fisher quests of Dawntrail that like some species were having trouble because the ley lines were changing below the sea. I might come back to the game in a year or two. She's crazy. So we had this information, and it was kind of like obvious that like the idea was that like we needed to find a way to prevent like this collapse without doing like the full-fledged like rejoining of the Asians, right? So I am thinking that like this extension is about like creating like bridges between the reflections, kind of like fulfilling Stola's long wish of opening a gate to the first and to other reflections and allowing like travel. I believe that like this is at least the first step in that direction. I would be surprised if by the end of like this long narrative arc we would not be able to go from one reflection to the others, by using like dimensional portals or traveling like the sea of ether. I have like specific theories about like how it will happen. I think this is very much linked to the world trees since we saw it in the trailer for Evercold. But yeah, very interested in the fact that like this is not the 13th, and I gather that like it will probably be later down the line. As will Meracidia, because Meracidia is home to Aetheris World Tree, and I believe this will probably be the finale of the story. In the trailer per se, I don't think like there's too much to talk about. Obviously, like there was a lot of people, and I think they were completely right, saying that it felt very much like Evansward's cross Shadowbringers, especially with this first shot that we had with Estinian, Alfino, and the Wall traveling to the fourth together. Very reminiscent to the road trip from Heavensward. I am guessing that we'll have at least two teams, one team like on the air and one team on the ground. I think that like the story is very reminiscent from Chrono Trigger, actually, with this whole idea of like a world being like encased in ice and like the civilization fleeing like towards the sky, but then at some point like ice is melting and things are happening in the ground again. This feels very much like the whole Zeal's Kingdom storyline in Chrono Trigger in Antiquity. So I am interested in what they're doing. I think like the visuals were really, really good. Actually, I really loved like seeing the different zones. It felt like the graphical update was here finally. And we had like very lush environments. Maracia in 10 years, I completely agree. Like, I don't think that, like, we'll see Maracidia in maybe not 10 years, but, like, let's say not in the next, like, 4 years. If I don't type anymore, I'm was attacked by the beaver family. Try not to die from beavers' attacks. Okay, so things were happening. Obviously, like this is like the exile from here. I guess you had like this is not portrayed here, but you had like the aura farmer in there. Very interesting, very interested. So it is what it is. I feel pretty confident about like Evercold, if I say so myself. Square Enix held a glass to my door and heard me talking about how there isn't a strictly winter-based fantasy, then walked off cackling like a 60s cartoon villain. I think it was pretty obvious to some extent that we would have like a winter expansion. I think like most people were expecting us to explore the northern part of the star, but it's true like that completely going in this like new reflection feels like, and the fourth feels like very unexpected to some extent. I don't know. I think it's still unclear, even with the 4 minutes of the trailer, if it will be only the fourth a la Shadowbringers, or if we'll also spend some time on Aetheris, since we actually have the portal, well, the key to open like a portal from, well, between the dimensions. I would like us to explore also things like in the source at the same time, like have really like 2 or 3 different teams that are collaborating. I think that was like kind of like the thing that didn't work with Don't Try to some extent. It's the fact that like we had to fit like all the science in one singular team instead of like having them handle things like as like task forces, closer to what we had to some extent in the transition patches in the previous expansions. And Celeste, you are here for the fishing. This is not about fishing. This was just a bait. We're not fishing in here. Maybe we'll talk about fishing a little bit in 14, but like this is not a fishing stream. I'm sorry. Apart that we are like fishing for conversation topics. Okay, so we had like obviously things about like whatever the new arc, very good, very interesting. Who is the Wanderer is a bit interesting. Wanderer is obviously the term that is used for the for the people coming from the sky. I think it will refer to the science, but it is still very unclear at this stage, especially with this shot and the singular to Wanderer. So kind of like interested in seeing where it goes, but it is what it is. Bait, you say? Yes, it was an easy bait to have people come to my stream. I'm sorry for that. 2 big fish have been discovered already. I'm not surprised. The fish remains are absolutely crazy. I don't know what to say. I will say the glam looked quite good. I think it was like pretty nice. I'm really waiting for the glam, like the things we had like for the job outfits. I think like were very convincing. So color me interested. So the visuals were really good. So we know that like some of like those things are dungeons. I think like this one here is a dungeon. It looks like splendid, very similar visually to some extent to like the first dungeon of like Shadowbringers. And I love like how every dungeon is very different from the others. And yeah, like very confident about it. I think there was like one screenshot that like really got me. I don't know if we'll see it in here. But like, yeah, this is like really pretty. Like the Aetherites are really pretty. Yes. So this town, my goddess, this is gorgeous. I hope that this is like a main city because it looks splendid. It feels like Gridania, but kind of like a more like almost Edwardian, Victorian feel to it. I don't know why it works so well. I think it's like the contrast between like the brightness of like vegetation, the flowers, and kind of like those like almost like Normandy style black tiles on the roofs. I think it works so well, and I can't wait to be able to visit this. Is it implying that this wanderer and the wanderer that the woman was talking about are different? That might be the case. I think like there will be some amount of like time travel shenanigan to some extent, I believe. And maybe we are like reenacting a traveler legacy to some extent. Gridania, but less racist. I think like, I can't remember who, but like I was talking with some people about that, and somebody did like the exact same joke of like, Gridania if it weren't racist. Very good, very interesting, like new race also. I think it's very cute. So +2. So this is like their town, and I guess this is also the dungeon, right? So very interesting in here. Let's talk like very quickly about like the situation, because we need to wait like more about to talk about it. But obviously there is an entire rework of like the tombstone system. We are getting rid of like the daily activities to kind of like fall into the World of Warcraft like weekly activities, and a catch-up like system if you're missing the rewards from the previous week. I don't exactly know how it will work. I believe that because of their season thingy that is encompassing like 2 patches, my idea is that like you will be able to gear as fast as you already did if you are doing Savage. It will not change for you. But if you're not doing Savage, probably like every week, because we know that like a season is like 2 patches, I believe that every week you'll get like a totem or whatever that will that you can use to buy 1 piece of equipment that is like Savage eye level equivalent with different substats. Like I think like substats you will have like to mix and match and kind of like be a bit careful about like what you're doing. But if we are talking exclusively about like eye level, I believe that 1 week you'll get like a max eye level piece. So it's pretty good. As Sigi is saying, you can actually get those rewards by doing whatever you want in game. You can be a crafter main and be like max eye level. I think it's very good. You can be a fisher main and so on. There was obviously the where is it? This very good thing as well, I believe, of like the armory system. I think it was like obviously very needed in the game, and it doesn't like remove the grind of like having to get some glam or having to min-max like your substats if you're really like, you know, very serious about like passing or whatever in game. But at the very least, I think it opens like a lot of possibilities and would encourage people actually like leveling up their classes so they can bring them like even to Savage, because if you're max level, max eye level, yes, your DPS will be lower with like the incorrect substats, because it seems to be like scaling up your current gear to like your max eye level, but keeping your substats obviously. So even with that, I think the DPS difference, the DPS delta is so small, quote unquote, that like you can literally bring any class into Savage, and I think that's very good. It means also that probably the economy will change a little bit because you will not have like to buy gear for every class unless you're min-maxing right for prog. So you'll be in a situation where, I don't know, you'll craft or you'll buy like your crafted gear without keeping the same system. You'll buy or craft your crafted gear, and that is enough for all your classes to come into Savage. Melee mains can finally play more than 2 jobs exactly, then I think it's like very, very good. Because again, it also means that like every marginal improvement for your eye level, from like dropping Savage or let's say the new system of like gear thingy, every upgrade will be reflected on your on all your characters, so you can focus on your main, and there is less pressure getting like the right pieces if you want like to play like another job. Obviously you'll get like additional gear and you'll be able to spend it to min-max the substats, but I think it's like a way more interesting system and alleviating like a lot of pressures from players. One of my crafter main friends was dooming about this because he would not be able to earn gear as easily. I think it remains to be seen. It remains to be seen with how like the entire like gear system is working. I don't think there has been like no hints that like they wanted to change like the materia or gearing system like that much. So we'll see like where it will go. But at least for us, like combat like heavy people, I think it's like a very like welcome change that was like awaited for a very long time. Being poor is nice because the economy is irrelevant. What is she talking about? Yes, so very, very good. The fact that you will be able to customize like animations, I think it's like very interesting how they're adding a lot of like things that are basically not rendering modes like useless, but at least like I think it's a good way to bridge like the gap between what people were doing with modes for a very long time and what you're stuck with in the base game. So I can't wait to see what you can do with that. I think it's super cool. It gives like a lot more flavor to your character. I think, for example, like I'm guessing that you'll be able to use at the very least like old animations for like spells that are upgrading themselves over the course of like your leveling. So for White Mage, for example, I believe that like you'll be able to use like more elemental based animation instead of like the light animation that we had like for the past like 6 years or so. And I think it's actually a very good thing. Gives a lot more agency, flavor, and possibilities to the players. Phantom Rush already has the best animation, no skins needed. It is true, she is right. So that was that. Obviously, there is like the whole like advanced like character creator. I think it's like a very good thing, but we'll see like very insane like things like obviously on the other world. I don't know how you will justify that like lore wise, but it is what it is. I think it's very good. There was like some comparison at some point. I think that this is like very funny because the character on the right feels like it's a modded character, like in the best way possible. And so again, there's like this idea of like bridging the gap between the old game and like, well, what we'll be able to do like with what we're able to do with mods and stuff. So very, very good. And we know that this is only like a first step like towards like a revamping of their character creation system, and we'll see more of it like in the future. In a world of magic, surely you can eat a mushroom that makes you green. I guess so. I think, I'm very curious to see like what it will give us, but I'm not like complaining like the slightest. I think like it's a wonderful change. Obviously, like this is absolutely crazy. I cannot like stress how good like this change is. I think it gives like way more like possibilities. There were like a lot of like outfits that were, and especially like this dress, a lot of like things that were a little bit like annoying because it didn't really fit a specific mood because of like certain details and stuff. And being able to remove that, I think it's like it's wonderful. Like it's probably like one of the highlights for me, like of this quality of life changes and all, and kind of like a follow-up on the whole like, oh, you can like equip gear from like any classes that we had like a few months ago. Like this is wonderful. So very, very good that they are going for this particular change here. Also, I'm quite... No, she has like the flowers in her hair, right? I was wondering if you could like remove like the little daisies in this like haircut. But I think she still like has them. They want to like improve also public fields. I think like the explanation was so vague that like it's impossible to comment on that. We need to like to see pictures and like information so at the next FanFest. But I like this idea of like trying to revamp like old things. Botanists have such amazing grip. Well, yes, I think we'll see that like a little bit later. I can't remember where it was. Or was it before? I don't remember. Did they show the gear at the beginning? No, it was after, right? I can't remember. Well, anyway, okay. So, Botanist Glam for Rafflesia Prog, absolutely peak. So, okay, I think like this was like the very interesting thing. Finally, like something to bridge normal difficulty and savage difficulty. Obviously, it had to be like an intermediary difficulty. I think it's the right choice, and I think it's like the right way of like bringing people into savage like slowly. So very, very interested in that. I guess that they might also like start to like design things for this intermediate difficulty first, and they'll like kind of like branch out of it like for savage and normal. But kind of like interested to see like what it will give like in a sense, and what it will mean for us like savage raiders. Do we have like to do like this like intermediate difficulty? Will it release at the same time as savage or not? Who knows? So adjusting progression routes for 24% rates, that was that stemmed from the idea that alliance raids are just too long. Except for like Crystal Towers, they were like, you know, between half an hour and 45 minutes. If things are going well, and 30 minutes is kind of like for like crazy groups. So I don't exactly know what they want to do. They said like nothing on the stream actually. They said that like we had to wait for like the Tokyo Fan Fest. I'm guessing that maybe it will be like modular difficulty, that like depending on the rewards that you want, you'll be able to like choose what route you are doing. But also like I think it's creating probably like queuing like issues. So I'm not like exactly sure what they want to do. If this is like a modular design, or if they just want to remove like trash from like those raids, unclear, since they're keeping like the formula of like 3 different raids. Duty Finder mental roulette heroic, this is absolutely crazy. And adding all new types of battle content, so that is like very vague obviously, and we'll have like to see later. Player matching from all worlds in a region, it means that like we won't have to travel to light again to do raiding finally. A chaos will be alive anew. I think like this is such a good thing, and probably so it means that they solved like the whole like physical data center, logical data center thing. And I guess like this is like a first step up towards like the idea of like cross-world, cross-region travel. We know that it was possible, obviously, to go, and it is still possible to go like to Oceania, but maybe, you know, in the future, we'll be able to do like UNA and or Japan, whatever. And I think like that's also like very good. It means obviously we'll talk about that just after, but it means obviously that like they got like more funding to do their things, and I think this is a very reassuring like state of like the game, that they actually have money to kind of like implement meaningful changes. And yes, it's coming later, like this patch. So new jobs, people were obviously, we know that like we have a range DPS and we have a tank, a main tank. People were thinking obviously that it would be like a double like shield or kind of like gun shield thing class like a judge thingy. I think like a lot of people were thinking about like the designer of a judge from like FF12. It might be the case. I think it's right now what feels like the more believable, especially with the main tank situation, but again, quite hard to talk about. Okay, so that's the big thing, like the reborn and evolved mode. I am interested in what they are doing. Like we had the dev panels. I don't want to go like too deep into it, or maybe we need to find like we need to find like the thread for it. Okay, let's look at that like very, very quickly. So the idea is obviously that like reborn modes will still be updated for like OG classes, while evolved mode is like the way to go for the future with kind of like this streamlined thing with like more like individual like ideas or like personalized ideas for every job. I don't want to do like an analysis of like everything specifically. I think like for example for Paladin, what was very interesting was the addition of the parry on bulk on how is it called? Like, is it bulwark or Shieldtron? I can't remember. On your like low cooldown, if you do it like at the last moment, then you get like a free counter. So I think this was like pretty interesting, a pretty interesting mechanic. I will say that like it feels that because of like this like reduction of like buttons, the combat feels like very easy. But at the same time, we don't know what the design of the encounters will be in the future, if it will be more dynamic, if it will be like more aggressive, in which case I have no problem. But they cannot say on the current like design of like encounters with those changes, because as much as they were saying like, oh, this is not like an easy mode, every class that they have been showing, I think, in this like preview felt like way easier. So yeah. Oh, you hope Fizz range gets more supportability. So literally it's the case. I don't know if you watch, but this is the case, especially like, so we had like Bard, and basically, so your songs are not in like a fixed cooldown. You're not like doing your song rotation as usual, but you're like distributing songs, kind of like cards from Astro. And so I think one is, I can't remember like what they're doing exactly, but like every song like had a thing that they were doing. I think that like, yeah, Wanderer Menue was doing like was like allows you to do like a big single target attack. And I think like it kind of like buffs like auto attacks or something like that. I can't remember exactly what all the songs were doing, but each one of them was doing like a different thing for the party. So as much as they were like getting rid, because from what they have been saying, like they are getting rid of like the even minute meta. I guess we'll have like more circumstantial like support abilities that you will need to match like to the actual like pace of the fight. I think evolved mode looks very easy on a target dummy. Yes, exactly. I think it doesn't sound like very interesting on paper, not on paper, interesting like on like a dummy. But if the encounters are way more difficult, way more dynamic, way more hectic, then I think it makes sense. So, like, also for Bard, I think it was mentioned like in the server, like just earlier, people were saying like, oh, you can like now strafe with like the Bard since like you can no, it's not that you can no longer like back jump. It's like exactly this.
Jump.
Oops. I shouldn't be like in full screen, but whatever. Well, I can be in full screen, I guess. But yes, you can like jump like on the side, and I think it will be very useful to kind of like avoid incoming attacks. So that's like very interesting. I guess that will have like a new way of like moving, a new way of designing like AoEs on the floor. But there is the outstanding problem of the netcode. As much as this is very interesting, if the netcode is snapshotting like as hard as it did, then I think like all of this is kind of like pointless. Because you just won't have like the time to react to more aggressive AoEs, shorter AoEs and stuff. For White Mage, this is really where I was the least convinced, I will be honest, because, and I understand, they solidified White Mage as like the easy class to get into before like branching to like another class. I don't think it is a very interesting like redesign, unless we are taking an absurd amount of like auto attacks. Why is it not very interesting in my eyes as a White Mage main? So we know that the design of like White Mage was to historically was to minimize the number of like GCDs, because you can rely on OGCDs. And especially with the latest rework, we have our Misery that became DPS neutral. So we already had a tool for healing with our Lilies that was refounded with like the with like a Misery that was doing like 4 times the damage of a Glare one, right? In essence, White Mage was already like super powerful. Like it struggled in 0 areas. It was very good like on AoE situation. It was very good on like single target situation. You could burst like very fast by sending like a lot of like cooldowns. And it was already like the easy class, but you still had like some amount of like optimization with like the Lilies, although they were kind of like minimal compared to the time when Lilies were not DPS neutral. And I'm not saying that like the DPS neutral change was a bad thing. It was still okay because you still had like to play around your Lilies. And I think the latest like fights, I've not played this tier obviously, but the second tier of this expansion, the damage was like high enough that like you were forced to kind of like use GCD healing at certain points. Like I think it was very hard to get rid of like Medica free completely. And it kind of like created a balance of like, oh, I still have to heal, but this is like technically a DPS loss because my GCD is not DPS neutral, right? And you wanted to minimize that to approximately like 1.1, 1.2 like Medica free cast per minute of fight. The problem that we have right now, if the design stays the same, is that they have changed your GCD healing so that your healing is actually DPS neutral. If you cast Cure 2 in here, in this situation, you will basically get kind of like a stack that is representing, that is kind of like a Lily stack. So no matter the amount of like healing that you will cast, you will be DPS neutral or even like DPS positive from what I understood, but it was quite unclear from the live stream. And because of that, there is no punishment for you to heal very aggressively. And if we keep the same design of like encounters with like very low healing checks, or very like situational healing checks with like the repeated red whites, for example, that we had in the previous expansion, then I think this like evolved design is kind of, it just doesn't work that much, because you have like infinite movement, you don't have like any issues with your DPS, and you don't have like any issues with your healing. So And I agree with you, Sigrid. I hope that like the goal is to ask healer to heal aggressively, but we need to wait like for encounters to watch that. So I actually have no opinion right now on is it good or is it bad. For me, this redesign of healer of like white mage is completely hinging on the nature of the encounters in the next expansion. If we have like a very aggressive encounter design, then I think it makes sense. It will still be easy, but it makes sense. But also you will still be able to play like the reborn mode for white mage. And this is probably what I will do, because in this state and from what we have seen, I don't think the new white mage is very interesting to me. It feels like way too easy and without, or at least I wasn't able to discern any amount of like interesting optimization that you could do. But I will be able to play Reborn, and I think it's kind of like the interesting thing is that, oh, maybe this like Evolve design is pushing for like a more difficult healing check, but you will be able to play with the Reborn classes that are struggling a bit more with healing, and you will have like to like actually play way more like a way tighter game with your old toolkit, where you're still trying like to optimize your DPS and like minimize the amount of like healing done per with like GCDs, right? And I think this is very interesting because in a sense, like, yes, you could play like Evolved, and probably like in Savage, like you want to play like Evolve. But at the same time, there is nothing really, unless like your party is absolutely crazy, nothing really is like preventing you from playing like Reborn and kind of like adding a difficulty because of like the new healing design, right? To be fair, this also feels very proof of concept. This is true. So like we'll be obviously like waiting for what it will be. But I think this is like an interesting direction at the very least. I think it works very well as a proof of concept. Now we are kind of like waiting for the actual, you know, implementation and how it will like interact with the other parts of the game. I think like Dragoon was an interesting thing. I will not comment because I don't know Reborn Dragoon. But the whole like positional thingy was interesting. And especially like the kind of like Dragoon thingy of like having their personal like true north that you could use both like for DPS and for like skipping positional was interesting, because you had like a tug of war between like, oh, do I do correct positioning, but left and right might be difficult on very big bosses, or do I like maximize my DPS by like sending things very early, since we're out of like the 2-minute meta. And I think like this is a very interesting design. I think like adding left and right as like separate like positionals is opening like interesting like avenues for gameplay. So very interesting, very interested in seeing like what it will be like in combat like in the future. Now we wait for, will this be good or will this suck? I mean, at the very least, like, because they're working both on like Reborn and Evolved, I think like there is a lot of like possibilities to like play around and like change things if that doesn't work. I think Dragoon has some insane potential if the encounters are more dynamic. Yes, I think they need to get rid of kind of like the more, you know, the main tank is kind of like dictating the positionals, because of like with Dragoon, I think that like you will struggle a lot when the enemies is like moving around in a very erratic fashion. So maybe like it will be a bit more like choreographed to some extent, but I think like the potential is absolutely crazy for like some very interesting shenanigans. More positionals and lower the boss hitbox, that would be crazy. But yeah, so that's basically it. They say that they are getting rid of like the 2-minute burst window, and I think it's a very, very good thing. And this is both for Reborn or Evolved, so it means that like even if we play Reborn, there is no point in like kind of like bursting altogether. So kind of like a few questions that are like open here is that, are we completely getting rid of like burst windows? To the extent that like all classes are becoming selfish DPS, or are we actually like still having like synergies? And it seems to be the case with like Bard, for example, right? We have seen that like Bard had like a lot of like support abilities. You still want to time things properly, but I think it will be more flexible. And there might be a situation where we dance more around the timeline of the fight. It's like, oh, the boss is kind of like bursting at this moment and it's difficult to do our thing. So let's use like the Bard, I don't know, like DPS buffs a little bit like beforehand, so we can like actually fit everything before like focusing on the mechanic. So I think it's again very up in the air, very like fight dependent, but I think at the very least like removing like the even minute burst is like very interesting. About that, I have like no opinion. I think it's like good so that like you can at least play your class as is, even when synced at level like 50, but it doesn't resolve the problem that like if you get, I don't know, Sastasha, this will be like a pain, right? But it is what it is. About that, I think it makes sense to some extent, like it was already something that was felt to some extent, like you had like some tanks that were struggling a bit more with like being main tanks. I think like playing Paladin as a main tank was always like a bit of a sketchy thing. So why not kind of like need to see how things are happening. If the damage, obviously the incoming damage is like very high, I think it creates like a lot of like open space for like off tanks to kind of like really play with the healers. So I think that's like very, very interesting. And it was only possible to do with this solidification into like 2 different like roles. So I'm fine with that. As someone who is doing coils at the moment, this is huge. It will be true. You'll be able to do coils with like the entire like toolkit. Yeah, and that was it for that. I'm sorry, this was supposed to be Zatsudan and we're just talking about like 14. This is crazy work. So yeah, we talked about that. I'm surprised that they did not do the crunch on this expansion, but this is what it is. So this is their new like, you know, open field like rework. We won't talk about it. I think the dungeons are very, very interesting. What is happening in here? Like what is happening so that like you have so many different things? I don't know. I literally do not know. So it is what it is. It's very funny that it's supposed to be like an ice winter expansion and you have like no actual like dungeon that is like ice related in here. This feels like the ocean temple in like Chrono Trigger to some extent, so you know, it is what it is. I think the gear looks like wonderful. Zatsudan about like, I mean, we are chatting to be fair. I think the gear looks like really, really, really good. Yes, it seems to be like very Nordic influences. I do agree. And I think that's like very, very cool. So very, very interesting gear. I think like we are way more classic in design, I think, especially like if you check like the summoner like garbs. But I love the level of detail. And so this was like very funny because I think it's denser, right? From like the shoes. But I will be honest, when I saw that like on stream, I was like, this is like 100% like Astro gear. Well, it doesn't matter in the great scheme of things because obviously you'll be able to equip that or glam that onto any class. But yeah, I love like the transparency. I think it looks like super cool. I just love the design, and the crafter and gatherer gear is crazy. Like that looks really, 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 really good. I don't know what class exactly it is. I don't know if it is I don't know. It might be, how is it called? Oh my god, I have like a blank. how is it called in English already? Goldsmith, right? This might be Goldsmith. Hi, Cyber. Hi, I hope that you're doing very well. Slutty Astro, this is true. Good for her. Gold Mage. I think this is so funny because people were like, this is Red Mage, and it's like, no, 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 this is like a crafting class, obviously. Oh, that might be this. This is a scissor. That might be. She doesn't know how to speak like English. Weaver, right? So very, very good. Like I think like the gear looks like wonderful. I think that you have like interesting designs for here. Everything feels like so wind coded for some reason, which is interesting when you think about it. Because of the etherologic considerations, right? Like, if you know your lore, obviously you know that like ice is like the counter to wind. And I wonder if we're really fighting the ice in this extension or not. I don't know. Because you have like those two enemies that are like completely wind coded, and there's no way we're not using like ice to fight them. So it is what it is. Duty support will be interesting with like playing with another player. I think it's quite good. There's the whole Evangelion like thing. I have nothing to say unless that like we are looking forward to plug suits to some extent. I think it is. I mean, you know, people. I'm taking it as is. I don't think like I'm particularly excited for it, but you know what? Why not? On a windy winter day, I say they're collaborators. They might be collaborators. They might be collaborators. So Beastmaster is coming like on the last patch, well, the last sub patch, so in September. I know that people complain that like it's very late. At the same time, it feels like people, please, you have like 1 million content to do in the game. Don't tell me that like you have done everything. Don't tell me that like you have finished all the content available. Go touch some grass, go play some other games like in the meantime. Beastmaster will be here in September, and you'll get like Beastmaster after that, like in 8.0. I think it's okay to wait a little bit. Dancing Mad, like as an ultimate, why not? I think it's quite wild. But again, like it doesn't concern me because I haven't done Savage. You can play up to Shadowbringers, very good. And I think this was the whole thing of like bringing the CEO to make sure that people understood that like, yeah, no, they have like budget. I think Square Enix finally understood that what is bringing money to their company is not like AI slop, but this is actually like 14. And I think that explains like a lot about like the amount of things we will have like coming forward, because they actually have a team to like finance, well, a team to kind of like do all those things, and a team that is funded by Square Enix finally. Chat makes a static to get Miyabi into Dancing Mad for the bit. I think that would be crazy. Like we would need to go through Savage before doing that. Beastmaster not having a whip is crazy. I think it was a question like asked to Yoshi P, and the answer was like a whip was like too complicated to do to some extent. I don't know, like animation wise or whatever. I can't remember what was the answer, but I think some people have asked the question. Make Ultimates free to play, and I'll come back to FF. It is what it is. But yeah, and the Switch 2 version, I think like it looked pretty good, to be honest. That was like kind of like the thing. So yeah, I think it was like a very promising like fanfest, or at least keynote at the very least. If I need to like kind of like give my overall opinion, at least they have like acknowledged all the issues of the game. We have like very interesting like changes. I think especially like the weekly system looks very good. A lot of like quality of life, a lot of like customization options. I think it's great. They're finally like tackling outstanding issues. The only one that was not addressed, I believe, was the netcode situation, and kind of like a lot of the design is hinging into like, will they be able to rework the netcode? Obviously, this is Japan, so they will not like talk about it like I think in a keynote until it's kind of like ready. But I hope that like this is like the case going into like 8.0 or 8.x, because things will be like very complicated without it. Fire 2 procs, I don't think it does. What are they talking about? But yeah, so very interested in like the game, very interested in like playing the next expansion. I'm very interested in the current patch as well. I want to play that like at some point, but I'm waiting for Reasons trademark. And yeah, that's basically it. Like I think, you know, maybe to some extent like 14 will become like a main game again for me. Not like to the extent that it was like I was playing like every day back then, but at least I want to put like a little bit more time again into like content in this game. I'm mostly using like 14 as a writing outlet right now. I'm writing like every week, and I love using like 14 for that. But like being able to actually play the game as well, I think it's fun. I'm looking forward to the future. And as much as I have been dunking on like Yoshi P for a very long time, I think that in his keynote, it was like a bit more careful in terms of like wording, the way he was like promising things. It didn't feel like he was like lying on purpose on like some very, you know, big promises and stuff. So I appreciate the more grounded explanation of things, and actually like backing that up with like pictures and stuff. So very satisfied about like what we have seen, and I want to apologize to some extent to Yoshi P for everything that I've been saying in the past 4 years. Maybe my man still has it in him. FF is for ARPing. I mean, I'm basically just doing like ARPing and like, you know, FF. Like I'm doing like roulettes and MSQ on my alt, but just like for OP reasons. Like this is the true situation right now. Is it worth saving myself from watching the race to blind Rock Kefka whenever I do come back? Why would you? I don't know. Do what you think is fun for you. I don't even know what you're talking about, to be fair. Like, why wouldn't you like watch the race? But yeah, so like a very interesting thing. And I think like this is kind of like, because this was a very like crazy day. I remember that like in this like Friday, we had also like the dev stream for Genshin, and kind of like what they wanted to do for Shneznaya and beyond, and that was also like so good. Like the things we have seen, the music and all, it was so good. Because Shneznaya is obviously based on Russia. You had like the entire soundtrack of like the stream that was very romantic, classical music. Kind of like Tchaikovsky, a little bit of like Rachmaninoff. It felt very like also symphonic like poems. And I watched like the video, the dev video, before like tuning into the 14 stream. And I think like Genshin is doing like very, very well right now, barring, endgame like, shenanigans, but that's the case for all like Hoyoverse like design. It is what it is. But yeah, like a lot of like nice things to look forward like in the next months and stuff. Also, like for 14, they were saying that like the release is in January. I don't know to what extent we can believe them. Like I'm still expecting this to be delayed to some extent. I don't think that like January is a realistic like schedule for them, a time frame of release for them. But you know what? Like if they actually release in January, then I will just like upload because it would mean that like they're actually very like neat on their new like dev schedule, and they have like money to back what they're saying. The fight might be like, oh, World Prog on release is a fight you can't experience anymore, but I'll just watch a Ronin video on the I guess like it's your autocorrect, right? Like you'll watch like a Ronin video on the race in 5 years anyhow. It is what it is. Like I think this is also like the situation right now is that like as much as I do enjoy the game and I do enjoy like spending time on the game, I don't have time like to commit as much as I did. Like I'm too busy right now. Like I've not been able to work that much this week because I was cooked like on Monday and very tired yesterday. And like I'm juggling like so many projects at the same time. I'm like realistically I cannot add like something more to my schedule. Obviously, I want to see like the new design of like fights. I kind of want to get into Savage again, like next expansion. But I know that to some extent it will not be realistic unless I try to find like a way to fit that into, I don't know, my stream schedule. Maybe, like if I'm streaming like my Savage Prog, maybe we can do this, but I don't know. Your autocorrect is Zatsudaning. It is what it is. But yeah, I think like time is also like flowing so fast. I feel like I'm still recovering from like the fishing video in terms of like energy and stuff. And I'm already like so deep in like the Silent Hill video, like it hasn't stopped. I need like 2 weeks of vacation like soon. And by soon, I mean like maybe in like 1 or 2 weeks. But yeah, I feel like a bit stressed for a lot of reasons. Like not necessarily the streams per se, not even like the video essay, but like all the things like around that. Like I have like translation projects that are ongoing, like paid one. So I kind of like need to be efficient. I have other like little things on the side that I'm working on, and it's not even like speaking of like all the administrative things that I have to do, and it's kind of like taking a toll. I think like yesterday, I mean last night and the night before, I went to bed with like a fever every night. And at first I thought like on Monday evening, I was like, oh, I have a fever. Maybe this is just like from, my trip to, well, my medical like appointment. It was a bit like exhausting, so it is what it is. And then I got like a fever again like last night, and I was like, oh no, this is stress. This is actually like the sign of, like, of me being very stressed. If every night I'm like struggling like this, help. I can't wait to finish my semester so I can go straight into a new job. Yeah, I get that. Like, when is your semester finishing? Like, in France, people are out of like uni already. So, do you still have like 1 month or what? Like with with your semester? Around the end of June? Oh my god, this is so late. Holy heck. I guess I'm just not used to that because like semesters are actually not semesters in France. Like you basically like, it's called like a semester, but it's like 4 months every time. So but yeah, I get it. I can't wait to finish my holiday so I can go straight into another holiday. You know what? +2. But I'm doing practical education at the hospital for 6 weeks, so it's fine. I mean, it's fine, I guess, but also like it's quite exhausting, right? But yeah, I still get it. I think it's like everything is so tiring to like some extent. Like you do things, you study, and it's like, to what's the prospect, right? I was thinking that like maybe at some point I need to give up on like, you know, trying to find a job that is comfortable. Maybe I should get back into like education. Maybe I should become a teacher at the end of the day. I kind of like chose not to do that for reasons, but at some point, like, you know, we'll have to be realistic. You don't study or work and it's still tiring. Life is tiring. Like just living is tiring, especially, you know, in this like um in this environment, in like the time we're living in. But at the same time, I believe that, you know, we should try to find like some joy in small things. And it's also what, you know, I'm trying to do lately. I'm trying to have like more fun. I'm trying to take time for myself. So compared like to another like, you know, time of my life, I'm trying to take like more like days off. Like I don't work on the Thursday, and I think it helped. But yeah, this is like a lot um of doubt. Sometimes you're like, why am I doing all of that? And the answer is really not clear, but at the same time, nobody will give you like an answer. So we just continue, we just carry on. I think like this new emote is crazy also because it works so well also as an astonished emote beyond like the nerd thing. ah, yeah, I wanted to do also like maybe stream stroll in my New Year's resolution. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. I wanted to show you because I've been shown a new doll or a new daily game, and I think it would be interesting to do it. So let me bring you that. Super flexible. You could call it Mafia Cheetah Evolved Mode. This is so true. The evil mode of the Mafia Cheetah. So yeah, this is like the new game I've been introduced to a few days ago, I think. I can't remember when. Whatever. So the goal is very simply put to do words association. So you need to find obviously like the word that is like the most obvious, that is the most used after like an adjective or like another like, you know, noun. And I think it's very funny because it kind of like tests your I don't know, memory of like fixed expressions that or you know, that exist. So we can try to do that together. I haven't done it for a few days. I've done it once when it was like shown to me, but I'm not the best at this, I guess. So concrete, what is concrete? Concrete music, but I don't think concrete music is that common. Like this is too library peeled. I think concrete wall, maybe. Concrete wall, it can be... Yeah, I like concrete wall. Pretty good. Democratic, I like democratic process. I like democratic elections, maybe. Process feels like more likely to be said than like democratic elections, democratic process. I like democratic process. They are undermining the democratic process. If it wants to work, obviously. Are you grading me? What is going on in here? Are the servers dying on me? Is it what you are saying? When I'm trying to do like daily games on stream? Oh my goddess. Okay. Innate skill, it can be also like... No, skill is something learned. So it has to be something else. Innate... talent could work, I guess. Innate... They're probably like democratic authoritarianism. They're probably like biology words that could like fit in here, but I don't think they would be like that common, or at least I cannot think of like one of them immediately. Innate talent. Innate skill. No, innate skill doesn't work. Nobody says that. Intrinsic. Yes, but innate is... innate relates to people, right? Whereas intrinsic is kind of like a logical continuation, even like for an abstract like thing. Innate attribute, I don't think people say innate attribute. Like I've never heard people say attribute. She has an innate cultivation mentioned. I like talent though. We take it. It's good enough. Collective, I guess like collective, you have collective action, collective. Do we have like fixed expressions that are using like collective? Collective bargaining, I think, is kind of like a very fixed like phrase that is always like put together. Collective bargaining. We are pro-union on this stream. Yeah, I think bargaining is good. Bargaining is good. We can go for bargaining. That's very, very good. Collective consciousness, I like that a lot as well. I think it's like very good. Hawaiian what? Pizza, shirt. And that's kind of like the only thing I can think of that is like kind of obvious. I don't know what would be the more common between like pizza and shirt though. Hawaiian pizza, no, Hawaiian shirt feels like a way... Auto coffee? Auto coffee would be crazy though. Hawaiian, I like Hawaiian shirt. I think it's like... It's the most obvious, in my opinion. I can go with it. I can roll with that. Very good. Hawaiian independence, +2. Ah, a thicker... You need a thicker... Skull? No, people are not saying skull. Skin though, right? Epidermis. Okay, skin I think is good. You need to grow a thicker skin. Yeah, very good. Decadent. Decadent poetry is obviously the first that comes to mind, but I think like this is too academia peeled. What is decadent? Food is decadent, like a cake. Do you say a decadent cake? I don't think you say a decadent cake. But it has to be like food related. I think that's what people would think first when we think of decadent. Decadent. Because for things that are not food, I think like people will use like lavish or things like that. Lamb sauce. What are you putting in your lamb sauce for it to become like decadent? I think when I think of like decadent sweets, it's like things that are like you make like a chocolate sauce and you're like kind of like pouring it over the entire thing. MTG decks. What is your decadent MTG decks, like magic decks? Is it like you're buying like old cards just to show off like how much it did cost? Decadent cake, MSG and golden flakes. Golden flakes in like your lamb sauce is kind of like insane work. Oh, I put the magic decks in the lamb sauce to make it decadent. She is absolutely crazy. Decadent sauce? I'm not sure it works. No, a sauce wouldn't be decadent. Like, people wouldn't say that. Decadent cake? Decadent taste? Ooh, it's not that good. It's not that good. Representative. I think representative is interesting. Like, you can like have a representative parliament. Representative parliament? Imperial circus dead decadence. She's just word maxing at this point. Representative parliament, representative democracy, representative because in French we have like député, but there's no equivalent like in English. Like you say member of parliament, so it's a bit weird. A representative. Well, I wish your representative is representative. Else, you need to like fire them, respectfully. Oh no, I know. I don't know why I was talking. Yeah, I think democracy works, but like a representative sample. I was so focused on like politics that like I think representative sample is kind of like the one that is like the most used. This sample is representative. I like sample. I like democracy also, but I think sample is like more used than democracy, actually. But is that a saying? This is a representative sample. Are you sure? Hey, you're maybe right. Okay, let's go for democracy then. Yeah, good enough. Faint. Light. Don't know why it came immediately. A faint taste? I don't know. A faint chaos? A faint. Faint hope. I love faint hope, yeah. Faint hope, you might be. Ooh. Faint hope. Do we have better than that? I don't think I see anything. A faint. Maybe sound, but you don't say a faint sound. Like the sound is faint, but A feint attack. You are on the wrong like word, Ellie. Light is also good, but I think like people use light less than hope, right? I think like feint hope is actually like more used than light. I think like feint light is very poetic, but actually not used that much. A feint hope though, yeah, I think she was cooking with that one. You were cooking with feint hope. Intrusive, I think thought is kind of like the one that like comes immediately. I think that was very good. That was very, very good. We crushed the average. This is really like a stream of like wordsmiths. Everybody is like word maxing so much. So maybe, you know, all the training in chat is kind of like bearing fruits. So +2. So library peeled. I think so. I think so. Very good. Very good. I don't want to do like too long of a stream today because I'm like a little bit tired. But I think, I don't know, what could we do? Like, we can just like yap, but maybe, you know, if you have like interesting like dolls to do, this truly is the stream of consciousness. Of consciousnesses. Like our consciousness are mixing together, like, you know, in this stream. We are like joining the hive mind of the library. Perhaps that is like the way you're entering, you need to enter the ivory towers. Perhaps it was never like a physical entry, there was no physical like way to get in, but like you needed to connect like your consciousness to the library to get into the ivory tower. Yeah, I don't know. We're just bookkeeping it interesting. +2. That wordsmiths in this chat. Wordsmiths. I was watching like interesting like videos lately of like food, you know, influencers, content creators. And I've noticed like, and I think like this is not just food, right? But you have like so many people like going to China right now and kind of like trying to showcase like Chinese food. And this is so very interesting to me because obviously you have like those like Westerners going to China and like exploring Chinese food and kind of like trying to explain, you know, to us like what Chinese food is. And I think it's like even more so than like all the other like occurrences for like other countries. It's the first time I felt like a bit offended by the audacity of like those white people trying to explain what, you know, we were eating for, you know, years and years and years and years. Your word Envil, your wordville broke. That's like the autocorrect. Do not try to smith with your autocorrect on. Oh, Tony Bourdon, what? Oh, board one? Like, I think the joke is like going. The joke is going too far right now. Bourdon. Yeah, I mean, like, I wasn't like understanding, like, you know, the depth of like this comment at first. But I think this is also like kind of like what I was talking about that with like a friend of like, I do watch certain content creators for their food content, right? Or like what you're cooking. And I don't even think, Soggy, this is crazy. I think like Baudin is like less like unhinged than those people. Because I think like Baudin is kind of like still highlighting, you know, what people are cooking, or at least like people cooking like the food. Whereas like it feels like very like egocentric the way like content creators are making food right now. This is so unrelatable. Like I think I was talking so with a friend, and we had this discussion of like internet really helped like bringing some literacy with food to a lot of people, but at the same time, because of like this very like social media centric like content, you have people that like know, they think they know things, but they actually don't have like any practical experience, and they are not cooking themselves. So all of like that knowledge is so abstract and so unrelatable, because nobody would cook like this like in real life. Nobody is cooking like the very hyped content creators in real life, because you don't have the money or you don't have the time for this. People watch like a video that is like 10 minutes long, and they believe this is relatable when like there was like 3 hours of footage that we cut. And I think this is kind of like the same thing with like the China situation. It's like we are watching you for like your food content, and for some reason you're becoming like a travel content creator, but that has no like actual value to give, like to add to the actual like food that you're showcasing, because you're not like Chinese, or you don't collaborate with Chinese people. And I think it's like very, very weird. At age 5, Pokemon taught me what a feature berry was. What is she talking about? He's learning food from like playing Pokemon. I'm losing my mind here. But yeah, it's kind of like a pet peeve of mine, like lately. This kind of like democratization of knowledge, but like in a weird way, because there's a sense of like stardom, or maybe not, like almost parasocial relationship with content creators, and it was already the case, right? Like in the culinary world, with the people kind of like being very like overly kind, I think, to Gordon Ramsay, to Marco Pierre White, all those like celebrity chefs. And this is even the case of like Fallow to some extent. And I kind of like missed the type of content that were like less chefy to a certain extent, and more like a more like open experience of like what people actually eat every day, that you have with some channels that are obviously like a bit like travel centric. And I can think of like Mark Vins. You can think of a lot of like channel in Japanese or Korean. And it felt like more sincere, because it tried to highlight not only the food, but also like the people making the food. And that's what I was saying, I think, about like the Japanese way of like presenting like food and dishes. You don't just like highlight 1 or 2 plates, you highlight like the restaurant where like those dishes have been cooked. And I think this is like the central difference with like right now, I think the meta of like food content on YouTube that I find like pretty obnoxious to some extent. I should remind you that like you need to speak in English in this chat, or at least, in French or Japanese, so I can like pass like what you're saying. Like I can recognize like a few words, I guess, like kannst, from like, having done German. I guess like richtig is like richtig in German, something like that maybe. But help. Let's keep it in English, please. But yeah, there was like the return of oh, it was the case of a wrong chat. My bad. There was the return of like Tom Scott, obviously, also like on YouTube, and I think like this is kind of like maybe a return to like the old style of like YouTube videos, and I hope that like we'll get away from like the current state of like the algorithm. Obviously, we are constrained by like what YouTube is like showing us, but I want like an more individualized, less homogenized like internet to come back. I think it's kind of like the case with people like opening blogs again, kind of like steering away from like from social media and stuff, but we are still not here. But I pressed the autocorrect word recommendation because I ran away with my phone in hand. Gomena, sorry. It's okay, but like you ran away because you walked into like an ant nest. Do I understand it correctly? What are you doing outside right now? Are you trying to get killed? Don't be killed in my stream, because I will have to answer, if something happens for you. It's like, what was she doing? Well, she was like, the last thing she did was like walking, and she was in like Miyabi's chat. That's crazy work. Also, Tangent, we still don't have a government. Oh, interesting. We need to check that, because I've not been following things. Is this live? Ah, yes, it's a very split assembly indeed. I can zoom a little bit. Ah. Social Democrats leader Mette Frederiksen appointed to lead talks on new government. So what is going on? Like, I guess because you're just with the left, you're not like making a majority, right? And I guess that the moderates, they don't want to like join the government, something like that. What's the bit? Exploring a new majority with the Social Democrats, the Green Left, and the Danish Social Liberal Party. Which is Danish Social Liberal Party. Help. But the three parties only have like 68 seats. It would be open, the Red-Green Alliance. Okay, but like for Denmark, please. Ah, okay, so this is like your really left-wing party, right? I guess they didn't want to join because it was too liberal for them before. The alternative. Green politics. The English names are confusing to me. It is what it is, unfortunately. I think it's like I'm kind of like cooked as well. When, I see like French parties with the English name. Um I mean, at least I guess like you'll still have like a left coalition, right? There's no world where people will leave like, I guess, another party to do like a coalition, right? Because on the right, like there's no way they will like ally with each other. The center parties had enough mandates to form a government without parties from the far right, far left during last election. Yeah, I guess here they're forced to like compromise with like the red green, right? Which is very interesting because Nordic countries, it's kind of like what you would expect, like the social democracy to be dominant. And it's kind of like making them drift to the center left or the center to some extent. And I think like there's something interesting in having to compromise with like more extreme parties on their left. Not extreme, but like being like overtaken on their left. So yeah, I think this is interesting because like it has been like quite a while since the election now. When was it? When were the last elections? That was, oh my god, that was like a month ago. So in the meantime, like Orban has been ousted. That's crazy. That's a crazy turnout also, I think. People are voting like a lot in Denmark. Like to give you like an order of I think we need to check like presidential, like first and foremost. But you have like 84% of like turnout on a general election. For our like presidential election, it was like 72, 73. Orban +2. And I think like for our, because after that we had like the parliamentary elections, and it drops like to below like, half of the people voting. Right now, the moderates don't want to form a government with the far left-right, but the right-wing parties hate each other. It's kind of like the thing, right? Is that at the very least, you kind of like guarantee like a leftist government to some extent. Well, but I don't know the state of like, what kind of like insane things the Social Democrats are doing like in Denmark. I guess it's like, because in this current situation, right? I guess like the red greens or to some extent the kingmakers, but there's always the conflict with like the moderates. But I still think that like numerically like the red greens are kingmakers, which is always very interesting when you think about like those type of politics, because as much as like the person or the party leading the coalition is kind of like the one giving the prime impulsion like for the policies and stuff, it's actually the smallest parties that are deciding. There's no clear majority that are deciding like the actual direction of like the policies. And if, well, the red green decide to like not join the Social Democrats, people will be stuck for a while. The left can mostly agree except for the Social Democrats who hate immigrants. That's very good. That's very good for Social Democrats to be like this. It's so funny how like every time you have like a social democracy, a Social Democrat party in Europe, in Western Europe, and like even Central Northern Europe, it will always drift to like hating migrants because Social Democrats have actually no sense of like classes. They don't know what like class politic is, and I think like that's so annoying. There was like this tradition like in Europe of like after the war, like the winners were mostly like social democracy parties and like on the right side Christian democracy parties, but like the rot in the social democrats parties, it's like unbelievable. I think it's generally the moderates we view as kingmakers at the moment. Oh, interesting. I mean, I can see that. I can see that, especially if the Social Democrats are like leaning way further to the right than I believed, because then it makes like the moderates kind of like the one pulling like the Democrats, the Social Democrats, like to their side. So it makes sense. And also because like the more you're on the left side of like, or the extreme side of like the political spectrum, the less you're a kingmaker, obviously. Like moderates and centrists kind of like act as a bridge between like parties and also between the left and the right, and kind of like obviously make certain policies easier to accept, and especially like in a world where the left gets like less seats on average compared like to several decades ago. I think like moderates will always push like coalitions towards the right, and I can't even remember the last time that like a meaningful like coalition was like stirred to the left. But I think this is also like a very interesting like issue to talk about. Obviously, for me, coalition is mostly associated to German politics, because it's what I followed like for a long time when I was doing like German in high school and middle and high school. And you had like all those like names for like coalitions, right? Like you had the how was it called, like the traffic light coalition with like very specific like scenarios, and I think that like in German politics we have always seen that like we have been straying like further and further like to the right. So there's obviously like something very interesting in those like representative elections and like those countries that have a tradition of like compromise and stuff. But it leads also to a situation like this where we are slowly drifting through like the electoral process. We're steering like further and further to the right, which is very different like in France, right? Like France is a presidential regime. So what matters is to be elected president, because our system, with the fact that like the president can call snap elections, is always like favoring the president. Historically, you had like the presidential election and then like the parliamentary election, like just a few weeks, a few months after, because the president want to ride his kind of like grace that they got like from being elected, and that would translate to like a clear majority like in the parliament. And so we only had like very rare situations where the prime minister were of a different party than the president. And this means that like we don't have a culture of like compromise. So we don't have this idea of like drifting further and further through to the right through coalition building. But the thing is, like in France, the drifting towards the right was done by the media, right? Because we have like a concentration of like media that is very similar to what you will find in the United States. And so people watch the TV and it's a lot of like hateful and right-wing content like all day long. You had like television channels and radio stations that were kind of like known to be like center-left, and that are like spouting literally like far-right rhetoric right now in the, you know, the span of like, I don't know, 3-4 years. They have completely transformed. And because of that, like you have a transformation towards the right of like the society before the election, and you see the actual result like in the election right now, not to a point where policies, where like the far right is winning in winning the majority in the parliament, but enough that it is threatening. Like in France, if we talk about the elections next year, in like less than a year, I don't see like, I think it's very likely that we'll have like a far right. Maybe not very likely. I think like the chances that we have like a far right president are very high, and we'll have like to play again to like in the second round of like the election. We'll have again to play, you know, what we call like the Republican dam, to kind of like prevent like the far right to be elected. So we'll vote like again for like a centrist that is like enacting kind of like similar policies to the far right, just because it's like marginally better than actually like voting for the far right. So I don't know what we are doing right now in politics, but this is not very good in Europe. I think like the win for like in Hungary, like Orban being ousted is a good thing, obviously, but also like he has been ousted by like a coalition of people that like were gathering under the umbrella of like the right-wing party, right? So the left said, okay, we don't want Orban anymore, so we are doing a coalition and we are accepting like right-wing politics, even if they are like slightly more pro-democracy, pro-Europe, and so on. Because you know that like, or maybe you don't know, but like the crux of the campaign was like kind of like opposing the kind of like international global rhetoric of like Orban versus like the concern for like domestic issues by the opposing coalition. The problem is that like now will we stay in this state of like rebirth of democracy, or will like this new coalition also drift towards like the far right in the exact same way as like Orban did? Because when Orban was elected, you know, like 15 years ago or so, he was not like a far right. He was not elected on the far right program. He was like pretty like, you know, not moderate, but okay, let's say, for like a conservative. He was not at the right of like the conservative. And it was actually a transformation that like occurred over like a decade. And this like begs question of like, can we maintain like this state of like democracy in Europe in general? And I don't know. No winning here. It is what it is. I just vote a red, green, red, and hope. I think it's like mostly the case, right? And especially like I think in democracies where you have like this split that is like way more, let's say, marked between like parties, you can like actually vote, and because it's like a one round election, you can actually vote for what you believe is the right choice, like the party that is the closest to your conviction, and you can hope and quote unquote be happy with that. I think like in certain like electoral system, and especially in France, because we vote for like a president, you cannot do that. You have to play strategic. So a lot of the time you have to swallow the bitter pill and like vote for someone like you don't vote for, you vote against, basically. What I do usually is that the first round I vote according to my convictions, because if I don't, then I would really like be depressed. But like second turn, yeah, um I vote strategic because you just don't have a choice. And even then, I think like lately we've seen a lot of people voting like strategic for the first turn, because the left in it's such a state in France right now where you need to bring like a leftist candidate, or like left adjacent candidate to the second turn, even if it's not your favorite candidate. So you're kind of like forced to like vote for like the left party with like the most chance of getting there, even if like you don't agree with the policies. And I think it's like way worse than like having alliances that are occurring beforehand. Like in France, what would solve like the solution would solve like the problem of the left would be what we had like 2 years ago, and kind of like the left making like wide alliances to kind of like have a unique candidate that they can send for the presidential. But it will never happen. So we'll have like 1 million different candidates, and we'll like split the votes and never like go to the second round. So there's like a very like critical issue with the French system. And I just don't know where we're going, because the elections are in 1 year and nothing has been done in the left. I'll be back in a few moments. I just need to go to the toilet because I was drinking some tea. Ah, hi. Hi, Jacomnesia. So yeah, I think like there are like changes coming, I think, especially with the United States. We have seen like a lot of transformation of like the political landscape at a global scale. We have seen that like the alliance, between the US and Israel started to collapse a little bit, not exactly like between like the elite, but mostly like certain people, especially like in the United States, started like having doubt about it and saying that like, well, Israel is in fact like the root of like many issues and most of the issues like worldwide. And we have seen, I think, like a displacement of the center of like power, of influence from the United States to other countries, and especially China. So there will be like a reconfiguration of like politics, but I think it's like very difficult to see where it is leading. Like, I think the victory, like again, I'm saying that like every time, but watching like Mamdani's content on social media, I think it's like quite a nice thing. It gives like a lot of hope, and you see that like popular mobilization have in some effects, like the victory in Hungary was not like a close call, right? Like Orban got ousted by a very far margin, and he had to concede very early in the evening, because remember that the goal was to change the constitution. So like just winning the election was not enough. What was the aim of like the coalition, the opposing coalition, was to gain the supermajority, so 2/3 of the parliament, to be able to like rewrite the constitution. And that was like an overwhelming victory, but that was a victory that was rooted in like popular mobilization and like a lot of like work on the field, like a lot of grassroots work. We talked about like Mamdani, we talked about New York, and we have said like on this stream many times that like it was also part of what allowed the left to thrive in case of New York by tackling like concrete issues and putting like people at the center of like discussion, and also inviting people to talk to like the assembly of people. And those are, I believe, like very good examples to kind of like imitate. But there is then the question of like, do we have in certain countries the necessary political culture to accept that? I think that certain like countries, especially like Nordic countries with this high culture of like compromise, can be sensible to this like grassroots like work. But then you ask the question about like, for example, we take Japan. How do you intend to change Japan when people are in average not doing like grassroots mobilization? When people are very disillusioned about politics, they don't even go to vote. They think that there's no reason to do that. They don't have like any reason to do some also, you know, activist work or association work in local groups, and there's this sense of like, and that's what I was talking about like in the fishing video, this sense of like desperation when it comes to like what you can actually do politically at your level. And Japan doesn't have obviously this like culture, political culture for a long time now. It was the case obviously in the 60s, in the 70s, because of like the students movement, right? The same that we had like everywhere around the world, especially in Europe. If we talk about like the 60s, this was like a moment of like mobilization in Japan, but obviously it has dwindled with the economic growth of Japan, and also like the crackdown on like political movement. You know about the Ampo movement, obviously, and incidents in the tail end of the 60s in Japan. We talked about in the video about like the 70s and how, yes, we had like a few far left movements that were trying to do things, and especially like action directe, direct action. But in most cases, it didn't really work. And you have like nowadays a society that is like completely obliterated by inflation, by cost of living, and that they don't see like mobilization as like a way forward, because it's just not in their culture anymore. The situation has been so bleak for so long. These small moments of positive changes can show people that we can still make a difference. The inspiration to make changes is powerful, in my opinion. I completely agree. I think like and we were very close like to like very big victories, right? Like remember, we talked about that several times, but remember like in the UK when it was the Corbyn era, we were very, very close to like a major victory like in the UK for a true progressive movement. That was also the case like in 16 with like Sanders, right? The amount of enthusiasm that there was like around Sanders, to the point that like he would have defeated Donald Trump like in the actual election. But the problem was the establishment of like the Democratic Party, right? Like the Democratic Party, the appareil, the political appareil, was kind of like the problem here, because he would have been not only like the bane of the Republicans, but also of the Democrat, because he doesn't believe like in the Democrat Party system, right? But we were very close, and I think people know that like it's possible to change things. I think Mamdani's situation is very interesting because it's a local win, obviously, but in such a major city. And every time you see things that are done in like New York, it's like, if they can do that in New York of all places, surely we can do that in our like own city, right? And what I like about Mamdani obviously is the fact that like he's interested in like national and international politics because everything is connected. But he keeps it very simple, and he keeps like policies at the local level because that's where you can like do meaningful changes. I think that a lot of people, they are sometimes oblivious about like how much you can change things at like very small scale, even outside of like the established political system. You can like do a lot of like, you know, volunteer work, you can do grassroots mobilization, you can give your time to association or whatever. It will have like an impact. And seeing like New York as kind of like a laboratory of that, you know, political education for a lot of people, I think it's very, very good. It's very inspiring. And as much as you say, like things have been bleak, it's hard to not like feel hopeful in the long term. But obviously there are like short-term deadlines that I think are a little bit like too difficult right now to handle, because grassroots movements is obviously in the name. You need time to like build your base, and you need time for like mobilization. And as much as like Mamdani was before, like 2 years ago, he was like somebody that was basically a noun. He had been in the political life of New York for a very long time, and he took like 2 years to really like build 2 years plus to build like his movement and try to ally with like the different like factions and parties, actors in New York that would like share his vision. And he had like this singular focus on like cost of living and affordable housing, right? And I think that like it's important to know that it took like 3 years already, or even more, like if you consider like his work on a longer like period of time. But if that's the amount of time you need like for a city, think of the amount of time it takes for like a country to win like national elections. And I'm not saying that it will not happen, but we are talking a bit more at the level of like a generation in the political sense. And we need to strive towards like those like long deadlines. Like things will change like for the better. There is no other path for our history. But at the same time, like there are like short questions that we need to answer. And here it's a little bit less clear, right? Like again, in France, we have like 1 year to prepare for the elections. I don't see a world where the left can make a comeback. Obviously, presidential elections are very rooted in like individual performances. So you can have like a debate that is completely like fumbled by like someone, and it will help like another to pass forward. But at this point, considering the landscape of like France politics, I don't think we'll have a surprise next year. And we're mostly like in a situation of like, what do we need to do like to win next time? So there's a hope, but I think there's also like a sense of like not resignation, but of like abnegation in face of like, you know, the bleakness of our world. And it's just a question of like, how do we progress like beyond that? How do we progress beyond this like somber period that we will experience anyway? And the thing, I think like again, New York is a very interesting case because the answer is always by getting involved at a local a local scale. And I think also in New York, not in New York, but in the United States, the whole like Minnesota with ICE, the Minnesota like episode was very telling of like, even if you're working at a local scale, you can like go against national federal policies and actually try to change things. And in France, what will happen next year with like the presidential election will happen. It will have like consequences, obviously, but I believe that like people are able to kind of like fight against it to some extent, and we have to, because if we don't, then who will? And yeah, there is, even like in bleakness, there's a faint light, there's a faint hope that is always here, and we need to grasp it. And I think this is like one of the most important like lessons of like politics nowadays, is to feel solidarity with people that are sharing like your condition, both like in your country and outside of it. I've said like many a time on this stream that like nationalism was a mistake. That like most of like the issues that we're going through right now are like byproducts of like nationalism. And I believe that like for the sake of our shared hope, and especially like I use my stream as a platform for that, because we come from like a lot of different backgrounds, like from different countries and stuff. More often than not, we do like share common experiences, right? We experience like what is happening in the world in a similar manner. We do share like this anger at what is happening, this faint hope of like a better world, and understanding that like beyond borders, we have like a lot in common. I think that's like the essential cement or base for like our political renewal, rebirth. A faint hope mentioned, of course. But yeah, so that's why, like, you know, I think like talking about like global politics and like politics from other countries is always very interesting, because everything is a lesson to some extent. Every country, every election, every political movement, every kind of like demonstration that is happening is like a lesson, a laboratory, and we can try to derive some lessons from it. Because at the end of the day, like, we talk about politics, but I don't want to do like idle like politic commentary, right, on like who is winning, who is not winning, or whatever. It's like, what can we do actually? And I think it's good like to take a political movement, broad like popular movement as well, and try to see what is working, what was working in like Mamdani's campaign, and for example, what is not working in the No Kings movement in the US. Because it's very good, like, you know, the No Kings protest, but this is not a protest because you're protesting like you're marching on Saturday when people are not working, and when you have like no actual effect on the economy. And trying to like derive solutions from like those different experiences, even if they are like unsuccessful, I think this is like important for us to have like guidelines in the future, and to like keep having this hope alive. That's why, you know, in my research on Japan and Japanese anthropology, and also like you have seen that like in the literary analysis that we did the other day, I try to showcase moments of hope, moments of possibilities, windows that are open on the future, because it's all too easy, and you don't need me to understand how bleak our world is. I think it's like pretty obvious for literally everyone, even without like checking social medias and you know, political news. I think the more constructive thing is like to talk about the small things that like are not really shown on social media more often than not, and see that like there are like possibilities of like um, of success. And I've seen today also that like the European Parliament has like ratified the fact that we are banning in EU conversion therapies, right? So again, like there are possibilities of doing good things. We'll need to see how it will like affect things like concretely. But there are wins. There are wins. To lighten the mood, the Citizens Party was voted in with 4 mandates, but 2 of the elected members have been already kicked out due to the scandals. The new far-right party instantly blowing up was kind of funny. I think this is kind of like the thing we need to remember about like the far-right. Those people are incompetent people. And that's why like in the long term, they cannot like win because they are just like idiots. And I mean that, you know, very like frankly. It's like I see the people they put like in France as like candidates and stuff. We have seen that during the mayoral election. You have seen that in the United States. They are like idiots. They don't know what they are doing. They have not been trained by like anybody. And obviously, like you cannot be a far right politician without having like 1 million scandals like behind you. So they will not win. They will not win. They are just like idiots. And, you know, that's what we need to remember. We are better than them. We are just better human beings than them. We care for others and stuff. And that's, you know, what is helping us like to survive. I think we talked about this right on the stream at some point about the penguin meme of like the penguin going towards like the mountain alone, and kind of like all the right-wing people being like, oh, I want to be this penguin, like I'm you know, nobody wants to listen to me, but like I will march towards like this mountain even if I'm alone. And it's like, yeah, and you'll die because like a penguin needs like the others to survive. And this is really like the prime motto of like far-right parties is like they just want to be contrarians. They just want to be to show that like they are not like others, even if like they will die. They believe in like this sacrificial thing of like fascism and all. And it's like, well, if you die, good for us, I guess. One of the Citizens Party members has also become a national joke. He went on national television to argue that it was a core Danish value to be able to digest lactose. Exactly, those people are crazy. Like I've listened like to some like speeches and stuff, not speeches, but like interviews with right-wing people, and you're like, this is impossible. Like there's no way someone would choose you to become like an official candidate. And then you remember that like, but that's the best that they have. It's not like a question of like choice. It's just the best thing that they have. So it is what it is. And obviously people are voting for them because they're not voting for individual candidates, but it's kind of like the thing with like, you know, people regretting voting for Trump, and you're like, well, what do you want me to say? That was here like since the start. But yeah, I think it's I guess it's funny in a way, right? To see how stupid those people can be. But yeah, that's basically it, you know, about like world politics. I think we talk about that, you know, every now and then. I think it's good to talk about politics. I've said that like it's really not a subject I want to avoid on this stream because everything is political. When we study like literature, when we study anthropology or science in general, we need like to talk about like about politics. I think like the Artemis 2 moment was very interesting because it rekindled like a lot of hope for people, kind of like this whimsical feeling of like space exploration. But then you need to be political, because you remember that like Trump has cut like the NASA programs and funding by a lot, and this was kind of like one of the last big like projects that will happen like with NASA, unless like they actually have a closer collaboration with like European and Chinese, Indian, and Japanese, and worldwide other like space programs. But yeah, we can only be whimsy if we sustain and nurture the conditions for us to be whimsy. And this is kind of like the world we're all hoping for, right? Me, when we talk about any topics, yeah, we're just nerds in here, right? Like that's why, I think it's pretty clear. It's always pretty clear to know like if you feel, well, if this stream is for you or not. Like if you feel like it's too much politics, well, what do you want me to say? And like this will not change. We are just like talking about politics in here and about like the world around us, because for me this is politics. Politics is not just like who am I voting for or whatever. It's like an impetus, an obligation to look at other people in their eyes and say, I see you, and I know that we're living in the same world. And that's kind of like what I'm trying to do in general. I was thinking also about like, I want to do literally like analysis more often. I think it was like a very fun stream. And I think that next time I want to do like a thing on like Ursula Le Guin, maybe. I don't know from what book, but I want to take like an excerpt of like one of her book and just like try to like, see what she was writing. Because I've seen like somebody on social media kind of like take an old quote from, I can't remember what they say, and she was just like destroying like apolitical literature and kind of like dunking on like J.K. Rowling too, right? And I was like, I forgot how based she was. So maybe at some point we should have a discussion about like Le Guin or I don't know, Pratchett. I think it could be like an interesting like excerpt to study. It's only gonna get more political from here. I have one more in me. I mean, to be fair, like I follow politics like a little bit less than like before, but just because I'm so busy, so I have like to catch up a bit more aggressively when I check politics. But again, I will say, since we are still here, there's a very good thing if you want to. I know that a lot of people are. They talk about like how social media and like it's very obnoxious to like get news from traditional media nowadays. If you want a very like quick summary on what is happening and kind of like get yourself up to date to like certain topics, I do really encourage people to use the current events portal on Wikipedia. It's updated like every day, and you have basically a rundown of like a lot of like world news, both like on a very large scale and kind of like not like miscellaneous news, but also like smaller news that might also be very interesting. And I think it's a very good way to get like political and get into like a political mindset without feeling like the dread of actually like reading social media or live coverage that might be a little bit too much. So I really, really encourage you to watch this like page if you are interested. It has become like something that I read like very often in the past year or so, and it's actually like very, very good because you get like Wikipedia page, obviously, that are linked, and very easily you can get into like content that you would not expect, and learn like a lot of very, very interesting things, learn about history and stuff. So yeah, that's basically my yapping for today. I just have nothing more in me. I'm sorry, I need to go back and sleep. I was doing a nap before like this stream, and I need to shut down this stream to go nap again. So I think we'll stop in here. Thank you very much for having joined me for, I don't know, this Zatsudan. We have been talking about like a lot of different things, and it makes me happy. I will see you next week. That was the only stream of this week, but I'll see you like next week for, I don't know, maybe we'll read like something. I don't know. Take care of yourself in the meantime, and see you